So I think when this came along, I was kind of sitting on the bench and coach turned around and I looked like the right guy to put in at the time. So it wasn't anything in particular that I had done prior to that they put a finger on and said, oh yeah, this is definitely it. So right place, right time.
Amazing, man. Amazing. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of fan questions. I even forgot to put on my special sunglasses. I didn't realize I had a look that I had to be consistent about until now, but whatever. Dude, okay, so something about Goosebump books that is I've always noticed my entire life. I'm gonna kill this music. This music's distracting me. Something I've noticed about Goosebump books my entire life is that I get older and then the plots seem a little like, they seem like they are for kids. They're supposed to be for kids. But then something amazing happens where all these years later I still find myself drawn to these cover arts. And I said to myself, who does these cover arts? I mean, there must be some sort of connection because they all feel like the same book. They all feel like the same they're different stories, but they're all the same. And it's not just the font, there's something about it. And it turns out it's you. You're the connection. Besides R.L. Stine, you're the one who did all these covers with the exception of two. And might I just ask, it's weird when you read your bio, like the original 62 Goosebump books, he did 60 of them. Why was there two that you didn't do?
So the first part is a little more interesting than the second part. First part was Scholastic was trying to decide between me and another illustrator named Jim Thiessen on who was going to do the Goosebumps covers. Now, you got to understand back then, Goosebumps was there. No one had plans for it to be, multiple books. They thought, some books. I was told 4 to 6. So, but they couldn't decide between me and Jim. Jim was a more traditional horror illustrator, and he did book number 2, Stay Out of the Basement. And so what I had heard later on after they saw the two of them and they decided to go with me was they really liked the use of my colors, that they, the real rich saturated colors, because there was a real fear that Goosebumps might be too scary for the kids. So really the artwork that I produced had more vibrant, colorful stuff, and they thought that was the way to go. The second one, Be Careful What You Wish For. The reason I didn't do that was simply I was on vacation and they needed to have they needed the art sooner than I could do it.
That's really
now back
funny.
in 2000, they reissued those books and let me redo those covers. So I have done a version of Stay Out of the Basement and Be Careful What You Wish For. So I can say that I've done all the original Goosebumps covers.
Was that ever a sore subject for you where just like, you're like, hey, it's the artist of the Goosebump books, except those two. And you're just like, ooh, those two.
Yeah, well, it comes up all the time. I'm, still explaining it. And like I said, the first one was they're trying to decide between artists. The second part, I was on vacation. That's not such a cool story.
Amazing, bud. Okay, so I gotta ask you. You really have a look. What inspired you to make to get that Goosebump book look? It's definitely a very unique. It's a very unique style. The colors are very vibrant and saturated. Like, who inspired you to get to where you were when it came to painting these? Was it a horror influence? Was it another type of influence?
No, it was. We used to experiment in art school with color theory, and color theory class was one of my favorites. And what they used to do is they used to give us, different theories with the color wheel, and used to do different scenarios, triads, split triads, all this weird stuff. And it forced me to use different colors than I just normally would. The real thing was everybody kind of, works in the same way where, you put your rich colors on the light side, and then when it goes into the shadows, you add black and you make it dark by adding black. Well, in the Goosebumps stuff, you'll notice that when I go to the darks or the shadow side, I fill it full of color. So you move from your light colors into purples and blues when you're in the shadow. So again, these are just tricks that I learned in art school, and I just kept on applying. But the other thing about Goosebumps is the distortion, and that was just plain fun. Twisting the tiles on the floor, twisting anything that was supposed to be straight to twist. And that's a Escher, an artist named Escher. That's his thing, and I always loved it. And I'm obviously not doing Escher like Escher does Escher, but it started to be a trademark, especially the tile ceilings and the tile floors.
Amazing. Hey, Nesbit, do you have any questions for Mr. Tim here?
Well, I've got one question I was wondering. First of all, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. And, well, I was wondering if you've ever drawn inspiration from your own life in one of your pieces.
Not so much. I mean, the fun part is using family members in whenever I can, when in a Goosebumps cover. My goddaughter is in The Haunted Mask. That's her behind the Haunted Mask.
Oh, my.
She is, what's more fun is she is now a mother of 5. She is a doctor, and she's 40 years old. So time has passed and things have changed. So she's not just a little girl behind the Haunted Mask.
How wonderful that she can look back and see that beautiful artwork and what it represents. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it gets weird when people start tattooing it on themselves.
I would imagine so.
Amazing, bud. Okay, so we got a lot of fan questions, and I really want to make sure we get to those. Just to say, everybody out there, if there's a little strange clicking sound in the audio, well, there's nothing we could do about it because it's live. So, haha. Here, I hope it brings you horror and terror such as this gentleman's beautiful artwork has made you feel in all these years in the best ways possible. All right, I have a lot of questions, Tim, and people love you. People really genuine love you. When they think about Goosebumps and they think about the nostalgia of it, it all comes down to the books. Like they're like, hey, do you love Goosebumps? Yeah. Do you like the show? Yeah. Do you love the books? Yeah. And it's like, what do you love about the books? The covers. They're always talking about the covers.
Well, if I could just interject, it almost seems kind of like food. People eat with their eyes first, and you see a dish, and that's what gets your mouth watering for what's coming next. You got to see it and get in the mood, and what better than an incredible cover like the ones that we see in Goosebumps to get you in the right place to get into a story like that.
All right, and speaking of Goosebump fans and stuff like that, we even have on Instagram, everybody, there's some really cool Goosebump fan pages out there, including Goosebumps_enthusiast. And he says, were there any covers that you've done that you had to redo because the previous ones were too gory or too scary for people?
We did have rules. Most of them were unwritten. One of the main ones was the no blood. You could have monster blood, and monster blood is green and slimy, but in the original 62, no blood. I had a real lot of good luck when working on Goosebumps. I think at the beginning, not too many people were, they weren't concerned with, I don't want to say it wrong, not that they weren't concerned with the artwork, but no, they weren't, I didn't have a lot of people looking over me and second guessing my ideas. And Goosebumps didn't get going right away. It took a number of books, and there was actually talk of possibly discontinuing it. And it wasn't until book 9 or so, maybe 10, where they started to take off. So when it was still on the down low, nobody was really watching me. And then when it took off, everybody had the attitude of, oh, let's not mess this up. This is going pretty good. Let's leave them alone. So, and that's very rare. In the art business, you work with other people. A lot of people have a lot to say. What you're doing is someone else's vision, and that's the most important thing, is you get their vision. But with Goosebumps, now they let me rip. the one I talk about the most, only because it was fun and funny, is Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. The cover has a couple of gnomes that are sitting there. There's one guy with his arms folded, and then the guy next to him is scratching the side of his head.
We got original. We got right here. Okay, so
the guy on the left is scratching the side of his head, but in the original, he had his index finger jammed up his nose.
Oh my!
Everybody liked it, but it wasn't until right at the very end, somebody, I don't know in what department, but the painting was sent back to me, and I had to pull his finger out of his nose. Now that is a very minor change. That doesn't take very long. It's a funny story, but no, I didn't have any. Repaint that. We don't like the way that is, or that's offensive, or that's too scary.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Well, thank you for answering that question. Like I said, there's many people on Instagram that have really, truly amazing dedication towards this book series and stuff like that. Okay, another one. Sorry, pardon me. Popo Horror, P-O-P-O, Pop of Horror, sorry about that, says, ask him which cover was his favorite to do, maybe rank a top 3 or 2, and is there any cover he had difficulties with and why?
Okay, let's see. I always liked Egg Monsters from Mars. Egg Monsters from Mars, when I read the synopsis, R.L. Stine was writing the book at the same time I was doing the cover. So I didn't get a whole book to read. So I couldn't thumb through and go, oh, I get it. This is what happens at this part. I got a paragraph, a handful of sentences, something that just gave me a quick description. And this description was short, and the monster didn't seem like much. And when I first did the pencil work, I was like, wow, that doesn't look like much. That's not, that just looks terrible. And it wasn't until we went to the final painting and started to add color where it really started to come to life. So, it kind of eased my mind. I was a little panicked there for a while that we were going to have a real clunker. At that one, and it's the same scenario for It Came From Beneath the Sink. Again, it's about a sponge under a sink. There is nothing scary about a sink and a sponge. So those were ones that gave me a little heartburn.
I think Nesbitt, you found one of those. I think one of those titles particularly frightening and funny.
Oh yes, the idea of a creepy crawly thingamajig under the sink popping up and scaring you while you're just trying to read the news or wash the dishes. No, thank you.
Oh man. Okay, moving right along with all your adoring fan praise on the questions. Okay, Amanda Caliber, good friend of mine, good friend of the show, and lifelong Goosebump fan. She has a few questions. You know what? I'm gonna ask them all because she's good people. All right. Did you read Goosebump books before design covers? Okay, we established that. In this, sorry, you've said almost all these. I apologize, Amanda. I think he's actually answered a lot of these beforehand. Okay, were you able to retain all the original pieces that you created, or does Scholastic own them?
Okay, yeah. Scholastic, the deal I had with Scholastic, the way the book business works is back in the day, I would paint the art, I would submit it, they would get it photographed by a professional photographer, and then they would send me my artwork back. So I have an attic with hundreds of paintings in it. And that's usually the way the business is done. Scholastic knew that they were going to want the artwork for alternate materials, any kind of swag and everything else that you saw that's been as part of the collectibles that are out there. And they were going to want to reuse the artwork. So they paid additional funds when I painted them to hang on to them.
Wow.
So I haven't touched my paintings since the day I turned them all in. So it's been 25 years since I've seen any of my original art, which is kind of.
That's amazing. I just pulled up a few pictures right now. One of them was the Werewolf of Fever Swamp. Is it Amanda also asked, is there any paintings that you wish you could have worked on a little bit more, because I know sometimes you had tight deadlines and they just had to go. Was there any ones where you look at them and you're just like, oh, that corner or that rock?
There are those. The one that was I talked about before and was one of the tougher ones was A Night in Terror Tower. They gave me a pretty leisurely deadlines for Goosebumps. We were trying to get them out once a month, so I had to get the artwork done once a month. I also did a lot of other book covers at the same time, so that month would reduce down quickly. In the case of A Night in Terror Tower, I could usually do them comfortably in a week. I only had one day to do A Night in Terror Tower.
Get out.
That's it. Yeah, so that's a paint all day, paint all night, into the middle of the night. You got to keep rolling. I finished it that morning, and I live less than an hour from Manhattan, and I hopped in the car and drove in and delivered it. So that one for sure. It's exactly what you see. You said a rock in the corner. It's exactly that. He's coming down a staircase. I think that staircase could have been way, had a lot more depth to it, and maybe some other hallways coming off of it. And, so it's mostly background stuff. The figure itself I'm okay with, but yeah, I would have liked to worked on the background on that one a little longer.
It's funny. Night in Terror Tower is like one of my favorite books because I love it when there's any kind of time travel or interdimensional or whatever. But I just remember being particularly into that one, and it's funny that we have the cover pulled up right now, and it's funny how a cover's worth 1,000 words. And like when you're in a store and you see all these covers, like I said to you before, they all feel like they're from the same person, which they are. But it is up to you to be the poster for the concert. It is up to you to be the ad on the radio. Like, you are the voice of why people should pick up this thing. Did you ever feel a lot of pressure to perform based on the fact that this book series was getting bigger and bigger, and everybody wanted the train to keep rolling?
So it probably would have been different if it happened today. You got to remember, back then, no such thing as social media. Everything was simply word of mouth. And I have a son, and he's 21 now, which puts him a little too young for the original Goosebumps series. So I didn't have a kid involved in the series when it was going on. So I was years and years into the series before I even knew how popular it had become. I knew it was doing all right. The book company would say, hey, it's doing good. But it wasn't until I went over some friend's house and they had kids the right age, and they're like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm working on a series. I don't know. You might have heard of it. It's called Goosebumps. And, like the kids come tearing around the corner with all their Goosebumps books in their hands. And it was then where I went, oh, yeah, this is something. But the idea of pressure, or I don't know, that famous, I have to get in the mood, or I have a block, writer's block or artist block. I think that's kind of a myth. If you think about it, there's no other series of businesses where you hear that. A doctor doesn't say, oh, I have doctor's block, I can't go to work today.
Well, certainly
it's
not.
Just, yeah, exactly. Especially now. That's wonderful that they don't have that. So, I always knew it was my job to, come up with something and get it done. And you just keep plowing on. There's times in there where you're not real secure about what you're doing, and that it's a good idea, but almost always you get to the end and you go, all right, yeah, that worked out good. All right, let's go. All right, move on to the next one.
Amazing. Another friend of the show. She's a beautiful girl. She loves this show called Student Bodies. She's also named Amanda. She was asking, hey, did you ever attend a filming of the Goosebump TV show?
No, I would have loved to. That was done up in Canada with where you guys are, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the TV show kind of went on its own. It really was a separate entity. I never had any exposure to the TV show other than watching it and seeing, they had a real limited budget, which that forces people to be creative, which is cool.
Yes, they did.
And I also liked watching how true they were to my original concepts. Some of them, they were real close, and some of them, they did their own thing. And I always liked it better when they did their own thing, because it's, these are ideas that, that's a good idea. I didn't think of that.
What about you, Nesbitt? You got one, right?
Well, I'm really, really curious because the book covers are so haunting. Like there's almost an unspoken otherworldly element to them because they're so haunting. I mean, even when you're using pinks and purples, they're still creepy somehow. Now, my question is, how do you get in the mood to produce that kind of work? Do you need tea, candles, or a music? Well, does it have to be day or middle of the night? What gets you in that place?
Yeah, no, it's I'm an early morning riser. I drink lots of coffee. That stuff is always rolling around in my head. I can't get it out of my head, so I'm glad I had an opportunity to find an outlet where I got to put all that stuff down on paper. My dreams are boring as anything because I think I get all that stuff out there in the day.
Okay. All right. And since we're on the topic of cinematic Goosebumps anything, what's really interesting to me is that I remember, like, when the show came out, I was so excited for it, but I was at an age where I started to notice, I'm like, ooh, they don't really have a budget for this. But it's child's programming, and there's endless comparisons to Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps. And Are You Afraid of the Dark was written for a medium where they're like, guys, we don't have a lot of money, so don't go nuts. But with Goosebump covers, especially with yours, when you look at Monster Blood 3, where people are getting gigantic, the books weren't intended to be a show. It just became a show. So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is that when the movie came out, all of a sudden they finally had a budget to justify all the stuff that was going on in R.L. Stine's imagination, and a lot of it that was dripping off the covers of your paintings in the books. And furthermore, something I loved about the movie was those ending credits. That was a straight up tribute to the greatness of your art. And I read this amazing story where you didn't even know it was there, right? Like when you saw the screening, you had to leave early.
So, excuse me. So, yeah, I know so they had talked about there being a Goosebumps movie for years and years. And, Tim Burton was supposed to do one for a while and it died off. And there was a couple of others that came into the works, but they just never got off the ground. So when the Jack Black movie got together, and I would talk to R.L. Stine from time to time, and he'd go, "Oh yeah, this is really happening. It's underway. They finished all the principal photography. Now they're doing the special effects." And of course, secretly, I want to be part of it, but nothing's coming up. And now it's late summer, and they're going to release the movie in the fall. And I get a call from somebody, and they say, listen, we have a project for you. We can't say anything. We can't tell you what it is. We got to send you, we got to send you a non-disclosure agreement until we can do anything. Now, I'm thinking it's way too late for Goosebumps. So, okay, this sounds cool. I don't know what it is, but yeah, let's get it together. I get on the phone with the guys, and they tell me that they're working on the end of the movie. If you saw the movie, and at the end of the movie, Jack Black walks up to the glass trophy case. He sees the Invisible Boy typing on his typewriter. Jack Black turns to the camera, he screams, and he morphs onto a Goosebumps cover, and then we go to credits. And they were having a hard time creating the Goosebumps cover with Jack Black on it. And so they said, this is going to sound silly. We're having a hard time doing this. And then I don't know why it took us all the way till now, but we figured maybe we'll call the guy who does Goosebumps covers and see if he can do a Goosebumps cover with Jack Black on it. So I got a chance to create that artwork. So at the end of the movie, for 1 second, my artwork is on there.
It's more than a second, Tim. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to give you 2 seconds. Well, it was great that was all going on. So
yeah,
these guys, the same guys who were working on that part of the production, said, "Oh, by the way, we got a surprise for you, and we're not going to tell you what it is, and we'll tell you, when the movie comes out, we got something for you. We got something for you." So my son Jack and I were able to fly out to California for one of the openings, and got a chance to go to a premiere and meet some of the actors and the directors and all that stuff. So we're sitting there watching the movie, and I also had to do some other stuff, sign things and talk to people. And so I watched the whole movie. I thought the movie was great. It gets close to the end of the movie, and they come and grab me out of my seat and go, "Oh, we have something for you to do." And I was like, I want to see the end of the movie. And they're like, have to catch it at another time. So I go do my thing, and my kid, who loves to torture me, comes back and he goes, "What'd you get up and leave for?" And I was like, I have to do some things here. And he's going, "Man, you missed it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's unbelievable. You missed it." I go, "What? And he goes, "I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to find out for yourself." And he walked away. So they kept telling me that they did something for me. He flew home on a plane, got my girlfriend, went to the movie theater, finally got to the end of the movie. And yeah, I was as blown away as you were. So for anybody who didn't see the movie, what they did was a new form of animation where they can take single still pieces of artwork and produce animated frames from them. And basically what they did was they took my original paintings and were able to bring them to life and make them be animated features at the end. So yeah, I truly, truly love that. That was really great.
Yeah, well, I know for a fact that's Nesbitt's favorite part of the entire movie.
Oh, by far. I could watch that all day long. It's amazing.
Okay, so I believe we are almost out of all them fan questions, but I got a few for you. Okay, so we've covered a lot of stuff about how you get inspiration and stuff like that, but what was the equivalent of a Goosebump book to you when you were a kid? Because scary stories have been around forever. Since there have been stories. When you were a wee lad, what was the Goosebump equivalent to you, Tim?
There wasn't a lot of interesting reading material, especially at a school library when I was going to school. It wasn't there. You had, what they called a scary book back then was something like the Hardy Boys. Now, that's just not cutting it. The thing that me and my buddy next door, he had older brothers. He had brothers that were, they must have been 10 years older than we were. And they had comic books. And they had a stash of comic books in their room. And we used to wait until they left. And we used to sneak in. And we used to snag a couple comic books and just check them out and hide them back in there before we got caught and got smacked around by his brothers. But comic books were and it was all kinds. It wasn't just the scary ones. These are like the real old time Sergeant Rock. And, this is even, before Batman and Spider-Man. These were just hardcore comic books. So that whole idea of pictures and storytelling. That's kind of where it came from.
Really? Wow. So, a friend of mine who's a musician, I'm not sure if he wants to remain nameless considering his new musical project. He's an alias in it. So, he was asking, how much do you do like commissions? Like, do you draw album covers? Like, what's the process of getting art done by you?
Oh, it's really complicated. You reach out to me through email, and I'll paint you something. The what's really great is number one, the return of vinyl to the music scene, so that people are actually making physical album, and artwork can be produced nice, big, 12 by 12. There's nothing like album cover art. I grew up on album cover art. That's where I got excited to be an illustrator, by looking at all of those famous artists from back in the day. I do more album covers now than I do book covers. Here's the cool thing, and it will make complete sense after I say it. So we've been, it's been since the 90s, since Goosebumps was popular. You guys were all kids back then. Well, a lot of years have passed and you're not kids anymore. And you're all doing cool things. Some of you are in bands. Some of you are art directors. Some of you are on the radio. And now you reach back and you go, oh, I really dug those Goosebumps covers, but I got a project now that I'm working on, and I want to include Tim to it. Let's see if this is available. So my old fans are my new employers. And that is the coolest thing in the world, because everybody comes into it. Like, I don't have to convince or I don't have to sell myself. You guys come in with a full, you're all about it. You know what I do. You know what I'm about. And it really makes for all the projects being very enthusiastic, because it's more than just a job. It always has been for me, but it is even for you guys as well.
Amazing.
And you've ignited that magic in them long ago when they were young, and now when their creative sides are flourishing, of course they're turning to you, and it's just amazing. What a beautiful circle.
It is cool. It is way cool.
I didn't want to interrupt you before, but what are some of those album covers you remember distinctly looking at and that made you want to become an illustrator? Because yes. I love them album covers, especially the classic painted ones.
Yeah. Again, I graduated high school in 1977. So from 72 to 77 was when I really got into albums. There was zero digital art, zero. It didn't exist. And if you wanted to do art, you had to figure out how to draw and paint. I was a big fan of the band Yes. Yes has a illustrator who did all their covers named Roger Dean. Look him up. It's some of the coolest work out there. You may have never heard of him, but the guy is awesome. Look at his artwork, and then look at the movie Avatar.
Okay.
There is a huge, there's such a comparison that there are lawsuits about it. And I won't even get into that because that's none of my business. But his artwork I found to be just mind blowing. And when I was way young, I used to try to copy his artwork. And people talk about that, saying, "Oh, you should never copy someone else's artwork." That's nonsense. If you were learning to cook, of course you're going to open up a book and get a recipe. And that's how you learn to cook. And then at that point, then you know how to tweak it, and then you can make your own stuff. It's no different in the art business. Look for something that you like and see if you can duplicate it. You'll learn something along the way. You'll figure stuff out. And then after a whole number of processes and a number of paintings you get under belt, you'll start to develop your own style, and it becomes your own. At the beginning, absolutely. See what other people are doing. I mean, art school is nothing more than that. They force you to do styles and methods and all different things that you don't want to do most of the time. But every time you walk away from it, you go, oh, it's not my thing. Watercolor's not my thing, but that's cool, and I'm going to apply it this way in my art. So, I got away from it, but yeah, Roger Dean, he's the man.
Amazing.
I agree with the analogy about the recipes. I could not agree more. It's important to draw inspiration from people that have done it before. The same could even be said to a lesser extent with martial arts. I mean, if you want to learn karate, you have to learn that karate.
No,
you can't just make up your own thing and go around swinging and saying, "Oh, it's my new style." I reckon somebody could fall on their face doing that.
It's Rex Kwon Do. Tim, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. I'm glad that I learned that you like the band Yes.
Oh yes, yes.
And I'm sure that everybody out there will definitely know a little bit more about the man who painted all that terror. I have one last question. Have you met R.L. Stine, like, of course, in person after working with him so many years? I'm assuming you have. And if so, what's old R.L. like, and what's the R stand for?
Okay, so I'll give you the long story because you got time.
I do. It's a pandemic. Yeah, something's got to come out of this. I'm like, whatever.
So,
hey, are you gonna paint a Goosebump book social distancing? Because that would be really interesting and topical.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I got a couple of good ideas for Slappy in a nurse's outfit. So, you would think, as part of the business, that illustrators and authors work hand in hand, and that's not quite the way it works. Illustrators work with art directors, and authors work with editors, and then the editors and the art directors meet. So there's many people in between us. So we were working on Goosebumps for years, probably 3 years, maybe longer, before I met him. And I met him quite by accident. And I went somewhere I heard he was speaking at a live venue, and I went there to see if I could just get a glimpse of the guy. And I kind of weaseled myself over into a good spot, and that spot was where he was standing before he got on the stage. So I was able to shake his hand and introduce myself. Super sweet guy. We've become friends over the years. My birthday was the 21st of April, and he called, and we did a Zoom together with him and my wife and myself and our friend Denise. So we communicate a lot by text and message when we see something cool out there that one of the fans has done, and it makes us laugh. We'll pass it to one another. He's a good guy. R is for Robert. Everybody calls him Bob. He's just, you couldn't meet a nicer dude. You would think he would be creepy and weird, and he's just a super nice human being. I wish I had a great story to tell you that, he was terrible, and, he was mean, and, he beat people up, but just a really great human being. Amazing,
Tim. All right. Well, thanks so much for giving us all this time. We don't want to keep you all day because, someone's got to draw those album covers. You know what I mean? Someone's got to keep those nightmares alive. But everybody out there who has albums and other needs of Tim Jacobus's art, how can people find you on the internet?
It's real easy. You can go to jacobusstudios.com. You can look me up there. You can contact me directly through that. You can also buy prints if you want. I'm real easy to find on Facebook and Instagram. And as you know, that's a real quick and easy way to get a hold of me as well.
I do know that. In fact, you're one of the guests on the show that I was the most nervous to have on, because I was just like, I hope he likes me. The others are it's people.
too.
The others with the live chats, it's people I've met before or have had a long time to get to know them and stuff like that. I didn't hear your voice until about 30 seconds before we started this. So I'm so glad that this went so well.
He was nervous. He didn't want to have any supper before, and he started practicing all his buttons and computer stuff early, so he wouldn't be fumbling all over the place.
Oh, you're saying,
I
Tim?
opened my mouth and I got that real thick Jersey accent, and all of a sudden coming from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. We love that down to earth voice you have. Indeed, it helps a lot.
All right, so everybody find this man out, and I'm going to I need your art in my life, Tim. When we're allowed to do things, and people are allowed to travel, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do comic conventions and stuff like that. I'm sure you people come. If you do Comic-Con appearances or anything like that, what kind of art do you sell? Or prints, or what can people expect you from a personal appearance of Tim Jacobus?
Cons are great. And this is something we kind of talked around just for a couple of minutes, but I try to say this as much as possible, because this is weird and unique. I've done hundreds and hundreds of book covers, but the only ones anybody ever remembers is the Goosebumps stuff. It's been a lot of years, and it's so cool that you guys still look back on it as being something cool. It's not dated. It's not hokey. It's not silly. It's not stupid. It's something that you look back on fondly. It's great to talk to people who are excited about it. It's not lost on me that this shouldn't be happening. And I appreciate everybody who, still finds the fun in this whole thing, because I still do. And going to cons and meeting people in person is great. I didn't think I was going to like going to cons, and they're fun. I hope we're able to get them up and running in the future soon, and we can figure out a way to do it well. I don't care. I'll wear a spacesuit if I have to. And I just appreciate that people still dig this stuff.
Amazing, buddy. Okay, so we're right. I think we're gonna call it. It's funny though. It's just like I don't want you to leave. This is the most exciting thing that's happened to me all day.
Yeah,
I want to
probably gonna be hearing from Ryan again at some
It's the most
point.
exciting thing that's happened to me today too.
I just keep holding on. But I don't want to be rude. I don't want to wear out my welcome here. But thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
Oh yes, and the bottom of mine as well. This was crazy. This was amazing.
For coming on the show, doing this, because essentially why we're doing this broadcast, not only to fulfill my personal childhood dreams, which I selfishly, bask in the glory of all this kind of stuff, because I'm getting to talk to all these amazing people that I've adored their work my entire life. But at the same time, we get to get audience questions. We get to help people ask you stuff. I mean, this is great, and I would like to thank you on behalf of all these Goosebump fans that have your work tattooed on their body. They made a life commitment to have your artwork as not a stain on their body, but a badge of pride. And it's just incredible that after all this time, A, you don't have an ego. That's lovely. I'm really happy about that. Really pleased how that turned out. And B, that your appreciation for the fans mirrors the appreciation they already have for you. So let's all smile a little bit later tonight, everybody, because this was a nice day. And he's on Instagram. If you want to know, if you have questions that I didn't ask and he didn't answer, hit him up there. Yep, that's pretty much it, bud.
Ryan, you're a good dude.
Oh, thanks. Can you say I'm Tim Jacobus and you are watching You, Me, and YTV?
This is Tim Jacobus and you are... Give it to me again.
This is Tim Jacobus.
This is going to take 10 times now. We're in for another half an hour.
I know. Just say this is Tim Jacobus, and you're watching You, Me, and YTV.
This is Tim Jacobus, and you're watching You, Me, and YTV.
Excellent.
That was amazing.
All right, everybody, we are back, and just trying to make sure we log out, make sure that this is all working and all that stuff. Thanks for coming by, Tim. I don't have books on my face anymore, but it was a good day. Everybody on YouTube here, I'm going to be giving you a little exclusive. I believe. Do you follow comic books at all, Tim?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, were you familiar with the '90s X-Men cartoon from the back in the day? I'm sure your kids must like it. Well, the voice of Wolverine, Cal Dodd, is going to be coming on the show. He's a swell Canadian dude, and he's going to be coming on, and we're going to be talking to the fans and having a good time. So anyway, thank you very much, Tim. You're amazing, buddy.
Thanks, man. You are too.
Oh, thanks. All right. Now I got to figure out how to stop this. Right, anyway, hello, YouTube. If you're still watching this, if this is where the stream's supposed to be, luck be have it that the stream was just on and on and on, although our cameras weren't on, and Tim and I got to talking. And he was telling me something really fascinating about getting to work on a certain prolific horror icon writer. Tell me about working with Stephen King, or for Stephen King, or just drawing a book for Stephen King.
So the lead up conversation was using the Goosebumps style was so saturated with colors, and how that became just such a thing. And for at least 10 years, all my artwork was just fully saturated, and even a lot of my art today is saturated. And in the 90s, there was no other way to do art. You did it traditional. It was acrylic paint and airbrush and all that. And that's what I used to create the Goosebumps covers. Around 2002, 2004, digital came on strong. And in the book business, it literally changed overnight. Within a 6-month period, all the art directors said, hey, figure this out. You got to start doing your work digitally and start submitting it digitally, because we're changing, and you have to change too. Or there was a lot of artists who got off the ship at that point, who just said, I can't do this. And I got to tell you, it was not fun. Again, computers were garbage back then. I paid so much money for, a 6 gig hard drive. Six. And I'm telling you, you would run out of juice. So you would have to stop and throw shit away just to finish. Oh, it was just anyway, right? I don't want to get too down that rabbit hole. So I hated digital at first, and then you start to figure it out, you grind through it, and it starts to fall into place. And you go, oh, all right, this is cool. This lets me do some different stuff. And it opened a whole nother avenue that the traditional stuff didn't do. Currently, I'm doing some sort of mesh where I start outside and I draw traditionally on sketch paper, tracing paper, and then I scan that in, and then I do my renderings inside the computer, so that there is a traditional tangible element to the art along with the digital, which makes it very easy to put into production and to change stuff. So that's the current method. But I had gotten away from traditional painting for so long, and I wanted to go back and do break out the paints, stand up, get some things that are wet and make things happen. And so I started to do these oversized illustrations in acrylic, except the difference was I was only working in black and white, no color, complete absence of color, and big. So I have a piece in the living room that's 2 foot by 7 foot. And, you stand there, you move your arm, you stand up, you walk up to the artwork, you're involved with it. It's tangible. There's something cool about traditional art that digital doesn't have. The main thing is there is one. There is only one original, and it's in my living room right now, and I can make copies, but the copies aren't quite as good as the one that's hanging on the wall. It's close, but they're not quite as good. So there's still that thing of an original piece of artwork. Flip side, there's nothing cooler about digital art. Man, you just start racking that stuff off, and one is as good as another, as good as another. The prints come out awesome, and so both sides of the world are real good. So almost all of my covers have the rich and saturated feel to them. Now, when I was in art school, we all wanted to do a Stephen King cover. Stephen King was the man. He still is the man. And later in my career, I got a chance to do a cover of a hardback, oversized hardback of The Shining, Pet Sematary, and I still can't remember what the third one was. Doesn't matter. And but the cover was The Shining. So I came up with a couple of concepts, and so they're done in pencil, and I scanned them, and I sent them over to the art director, and they're like, "Ooh, that's pretty cool." And what I had then they're like, "Well, I don't understand what's going on here." And I said, "Oh, he's standing outside the front of the house. It's snowing. It's very white, and he's got blood on his hands. And so it's all stark white except for the blood on his hands, and it's dripping in the snow." And I said, oh, wait. And I just painted it real quick on the pencil sketch. I painted in the blood, and I scanned it, and I sent it over. They're like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool." So I did my first version of the cover, and they went, "Oh, this isn't as cool as the sketch. Oh, you know what it is? Get rid of all the other color. Let's go wash it all out. Get rid of all the color, except for the blood on the hands." So this cover, yeah. And it's so this, the main character, Jack, the Jack character in there. I decided, well, this is never going to happen again. And like I talked about earlier, how I'll put friends and family in my paintings whenever I can. And, it's always good to take reference material, because you get subtle lighting and subtle things that you're not going to do just off the top of your head. Try to do a combination. I put myself in that cover. So I am on my own cover on a Stephen King cover. And it's a cool piece. I'll send it over to you afterwards so that you can take a look at it.
Please.
That's my only non-colored book cover that I ever did.
Did you ever have you ever painted the Munsters or the Addams Family or anything like that?
No, that would be fun though. That'd be absolutely. I get commissioned by people from cons. What you'll find is con people have some sort of favorite, and they'll ask you to do a character that's not yours in your style for their collection. Whether it's the Frankenstein, or I had somebody last week ask me to do the Danny Darko rabbit character.
Okay, yeah.
And do it in my style, and that was an easy one. I fit right in there. I have a hard time with the superhero stuff. I can do it, but I don't have it's not a natural slide.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to signal Nesbitt. I'm like, Nesbitt, you look a little tired there in the wide shot.
On me, I was just listening in complete awe, or I should say, yes, I was actually paying attention and enjoying what I was hearing. I didn't know you were on a large wide shot there.
So all right. So just because this is a very unique situation where the stream keeps going and stuff like that. When the cameras weren't on, we had discussed that traditional horror, like you love black and white. But was it their suggestion when you made Dead House to add all those purples and blues, or was it yours?
No, so I had done. I'll see. God, I'll see if I can find one of these books. I had done a series of books for Scholastic. They were different. They weren't always the same author, but they were the same genre, and the genre was called something like Women in Jeopardy, and they were always kind of the same story where the suburban mom stumbles onto something and she gets involved in this big mystery and she ends up solving a crime, and while she's the soccer mom or the soccer coach at the same time. And I started to do, and most of the covers are some sort of building, a house, a tenement, a garage, all done from that low worm's eye view. And then there's one other element there, a shoe, a kid's doll, something. And they're all this, they would continue on this formula. So if you look at Welcome to Dead House, it has that same feel to it. And it's the low perspective, worm's eye view going up the stairs. The only thing that was cool about it is that it's Dead House. And, that I was able to really play that up. So I had done something like it, and they said, hey, for this Dead House one, can you do something like you've done before? And I was like, yeah, sure, we could try that. And so it wasn't until I got a chance to do Say Cheese and Die was when it was like, oh, I get it. I get what like, if you read Welcome to Dead House, that's a real solid horror story. That's, it's a legit, straight up horror story. And it wasn't until Say Cheese and Die came along where I went, oh, we're supposed to fool around a little bit. This is supposed to be a little funny. And at that point I was like, oh, this is way different. And that's when it really took on a whole different life.
Yeah. Speaking of silly, I'm queuing up books such as Cuckoo Clock of Doom. That's supposed to be, that is in concept the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but you made that cuckoo clock menacing, sir.
Well, that's just it. You throw the ridiculous, and then you have to do that. You have to find the part that you can make it menacing and funny. I hope at times you're looking at it and you go, oh, that's ridiculous, but that's kind of cool. The blob that ate everyone. That's another one. That just, it looks like nothing. It looks like a baked potato coming down the street, but you put the right colors on it, and all of a sudden it's pretty cool.
Speaking of cool and goofy meets creepy, let's talk about that Slappy guy. That famous dummy that everybody knows and loves, voiced by Jack Black. Also, actually, little fun poll. Our guest next week is Cal Dodd, and we're going to be talking about how he voiced Slappy in the Goosebumps animated series. Isn't that kind of crazy? So anyway, we're talking about Slappy right now. Where did the image for Slappy come from? Like, did you happen to have like a ventriloquist dummy in your life you could pull from, or?
No, I didn't have the ventriloquist dummy, but I'm old enough to have seen Charlie McCarthy on which is a really old series, the guy on TV who had the ventriloquist dummy. And you don't have to go far. Everybody knows it's ventriloquist dummy is just there's something wrong. It is just weird. And I knew that I could, and I knew I didn't have to do much. They're naturally creepy looking, and all I had to do was light it right and get the dramatic eyes on it and drop his jaw a little bit more, and I knew it was going to work.
Amazing, man. We have this new tech where we actually get to show pictures of the books as you're talking about them, or doing at least our little best there. So we're going to attempt to, I guess, end this thing But what's
Try
great,
again?
what's great about meeting dudes like you, man, is just like sometimes when there's so much to say and so much fun to have. I'm hoping the audience is having as much fun as I am, because like this is really cool, and it kind of almost humanizes the work a little bit. You mentioned that. You mentioned that a lot of people have said this is their favorite book and it changes per person. But what would you say is rate? This is the last question. What would you say is the most goosebump tattoos you've ever seen of? Is it the Haunted Mask or Slappy?
It's Slappy. Yeah, it's definitely Slappy. Uh, probably 2 to 1. But what's cool now is there's people are now it's spinning outwards from there. It used to always be Slappy. Then it was the Haunted Mask, and then that was all you saw. Now I'm starting to see a lot more, and I'm also starting to see people like doing kind of what I was just talking about, where they're changing it up and they're doing their version of Slappy, maybe mixed with something else, and that's what I think is cool. Take my thing and run with it and turn it into something else.
Okay. Amazing, pal. All right. So everyone, thanks very much for watching this extended special, not on Facebook version. So if you're checking it here and if the stream doesn't work later, well, you saw something pretty amazing. Thanks so much, dude. This has been so fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
man.
Ryan. It was a good time.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to try to turn off this thing for real now. It's like, how do you stop this?